Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. The meeting is called to order. I'd like to ask our city clerk to call the roll.
All council members are present.
Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? We're going to have Phil Ortiz lead us in the pledge, but we also would like to dedicate a moment of silence to Mike Griffiths. Michael lost a battle with cancer last week. Michael was hired as an associate civil engineer in 2001 and was promoted to deputy director of public works in 2006. He was responsible for land development, stormwater, and geographic information systems. He also served as the city's representative on the oversight board. Michael retired from the city in May of 2014. He was a good friend of mine, and may he rest in peace.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The city posted orders of adjournment of the June 25th, 2019 meeting and the agenda of the July 9th, 2019 meeting in accordance with state law, council, and housing authority policy. We have a couple of presentations on today's agenda. For the first one, I would like to invite the Executive Director of Community Action Service and Advocacy, Ms. Dana Stevens, to the podium to share with us all about this. And hello, Dana. How are you? It's good to see you.
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Mayor?
Great.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Mayor Wells, council, and staff for this opportunity to update you on the 15-year anniversary of the tobacco retailer license here in El Cajon. It's got a lot to show for itself, and I'm excited to show you. I'd like to start by handing something for you to see. It's the case study. I suppose it would help if I turn it on. There we go. Of course, we all know that tobacco kills, and in America it kills more than everything else combined. All the drugs, homicide, suicide, AIDS, all things combined. And that's why we care so much about tobacco. And in fact, we know that when young people start using tobacco early, they are more likely to become addicted to tobacco. If they begin using tobacco before age 18, 1 out of 3 will quit. The other 2/3 will have a lifetime addiction to nicotine. And of them, 1/2 will die of a tobacco-related disease. That's not my opinion. That's the opinion of the U.S. Surgeon General. And we've been talking about this. He made that pronouncement back in 2012. We know that if young people can just forestall the initiation of use until the age of 26, they almost never will begin that journey of nicotine addiction. So the longer we can keep tobacco away from kids, the better we are as a society, in part because of the cost of tobacco addiction and disease, the mortality associated with it. In fact, in California, it's been illegal to sell tobacco to minors for well over 100 years. And yet in 2004, here in El Cajon, 40% of the stores sold tobacco to children. At that time, the age was 18, the minimum legal age to purchase tobacco. And so we were using young people at that time that were age 16 to purchase tobacco, and 40% of the stores sold. So we started working actually with Archon Somo from, at that time, the Chaldean Merchants Association. And he helped us. We asked him to help do training for the tobacco retailers here in El Cajon. And even he could not get the retailers to participate in the tobacco education and help them understand the laws about tobacco sales to minors. So after we completed the education program, we tried again directly after the education campaign, and again, 40% of the stores sold to our minor decoys. So that's when we came to the city. We presented the information, and in fact, some of you are here still, Councilmember Kendrick and McClellan and Morgan. We're here then, and we brought this information to share with you and asked for help to adopt a regulation to actually hold the retailers accountable. Although it had been illegal to sell tobacco to minors, there was really no accountability, and the retailers knew that. There's no state police. No one was coming after them to hold them accountable when selling to minors. So the city hosted a series of brown bag discussions, roundtable discussions with the industry, with public health advocates like CASA, Lung Association, Cancer Society, and came out the other end with an ordinance. And that ordinance was adopted in 2004. And thanks to the hard work of the city, and I know Morgan and Barbara put in a lot of hard work to develop the process, the system for how this was going to work. El Cajon was the first city in San Diego County to adopt this kind of an ordinance. And so it was really from whole cloth that this had to be created. And I know it was a lot of work, and thank you for your faith and work on it. But in 2006, licenses began being issued, and that's when we began doing compliance checking with the city. It was a partnership to engage young people from among our youth volunteers who care about their city, care about public health, and wanted to do something to help prevent the sale of tobacco to minors. And as you can see on this slide, although the dates are kind of faded, we went from 40% sales in 2006 when we began doing the compliance checking down to 1% in 2011. I would say that's pretty successful. And that was very, very significant. But things change in the tobacco industry. They're always looking for their next market. And it was around 2011 that they began to introduce electronic smoking devices. I tried to find for you the very first electronic cigarette that we had in our office, and that went back to 2007. Looks like a cigarette, and it just gets lit on the end. Nothing in it. Now, what we have today are a wide range of products with liquid. And, of course, we have to make these attractive to young people so that they have a continuous market of consumers. So we have the peach ice liquid. These are all things that our decoy purchased here in El Cajon. And we have these sweet little cigarillos in grape. We did some research. It didn't take long to figure out that mango is the favorite. Here is vanilla. And you can see the price. These are really cheap, and this is what kids buy. These were purchased here. I don't have the mango because they're still under lock and key waiting to be heard in the compliant because they were purchased this year. But you can see that this range of new products are really geared toward a youthful audience. This is one of the products. This is kind of how it looks when we do our compliance monitoring. And someone sells to our youth. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But by 2013, this is one of the new fangled products that looks like a flash drive. It is actually a smoking device, and this is not one of the jewels because they're about $40. So I don't want to have to buy those if I can help it. But by 2013, the youth use rate here in East County of just these products, not tobacco, but just these products alone, the electronic smoking devices, was up to 13%. So we came back to the city and said, look, we need your help. We want to amend the ordinance so that we can include these kinds of products in the compliance monitoring. And you granted that. And we thank you. And so we began including these products in our compliance monitoring. So I want to talk just a little bit about the monitoring. Because of the way the ordinance was written and because of the fee that tobacco retailers pay here in El Cajon, the compliance monitoring includes all 100% of the stores. Every single tobacco retailer here in the city of El Cajon is visited at least one time per year. There's no selection of, picking on anyone or any one store, any types of stores. 100% of the stores, every single store, from Vaughn's down to Christie's Donuts, gets visited every single year, and at no cost to the taxpayer. So that's why there's a fee to the retailer. A fee to the retailer also gives them some skin in the game. They have a reason to comply. They have something that they could lose. And indeed, over time, with enough sales to minors over a 5-year period, that would be a fourth offense over 5 years, a retailer could lose their license to sell tobacco here in El Cajon. That has not happened yet, and I'm glad for that. That means we're doing well. It's a good day for us at CASA when our decoys go out and come back with nothing. I'm happy when they come back with nothing. It means the retailers are learning. It means they're doing their job. They're checking ID, and they're paying attention, and they're declining sales. That's what we want to see. But on a first-time offense, it's $1,000. And what we're finding is that most of them will pay that $1,000 fine, as opposed to fighting that and having to come into this room, actually, and face an administrative law judge and defend their behavior. A lot of time, the retailers sometimes even give us a receipt that shows the clerk's birthday on the receipt rather than the decoy's birthday. That's just astonishing to me, but it happens. So that tells you a little bit about how we go about the monitoring. This, we use an evidence bag from the police department. All the paperwork goes in there. The product goes in there. This is an old bag from a previous year. Now we actually also include the change if they were given change, particularly if there wasn't a receipt, because we want to account for that. But all the documents go in here. The one that the decoy fills out, and the one that the affidavit that the adult supervisor who witnesses the sale fills out, and then there's a form that I fill out when I receive the documents and collect the testimony from the affidavit from the decoy and the adult supervisor. So we've been doing this since 2006. And then along about 2016, hooray, they raised the age of sale to 21 in California. We were not the first state, but we're the largest state that's done it so far. In our universe, we saw this as an opportunity for zero sales. No one's going to sell to a minor anymore when they have to be 21. After all, California had started changing their licenses. This is another thing that advocates had been hoping for over the years, is this change to a portrait format. So if someone's under the age of 21, there is a red bar. That red bar actually says in it, age 21, and on this occasion, in 2020. Now, this young man is one of my decoys. I'm offering to show you his license because he's aging out and he won't be able to buy for me anymore. But this young man shows this license with this picture, and they still sell to him. This makes me very sad. This clearly shows that someone is under the age of 21. And in fact, when he uses that license and someone runs it through their scanning machine that says bells and whistles, this person is not old enough, he's actually been told many times, well, the machine must not be working again. And they sell it to him anyway. So that's very disappointing to me. In fact, we have seen an increase in the sales to minors in El Cajon over the last couple of years. And this had us taken aback. Why has it gone from easier to distinguish someone who's under the age and resulted in greater sales? And so we've talked to colleagues around the state to try to figure that out, and we've actually talked to colleagues outside of the state. And as it turns out, that El Cajon is not the only one that's experiencing an increase. And in fact, a recent study that was published on June 25th in the Journal of American Medicine for a Medical Association for Pediatrics reported that half of the vape shops and smoke shops where you actually have to be over 21 to go in, around half of them have been selling to minors. So it's not just a problem here in El Cajon, it's a growing problem with the folks that sell these products to our kids. And that's what they're designed for, is for kids. Typically, adults do not go in for peachy ice or for watermelon flavor. Those are kid flavors. We call them the Jolly Rancher flavors. So we're seeing this around the country. But it doesn't mean that the ordinance isn't working. In fact, we have seen a reduction in young people reporting that tobacco is very easy to get. Back in 2008, you can see where 11th graders reported that tobacco was very easy to get. That's the green line. The purple line is for 9th graders, saying that tobacco is easy to get, and you can see that reduction over time. Now, that might not seem like a huge reduction to you, but a third among 9th graders, more than a third, that's a pretty big deal. In social science, sometimes we're happy to get a couple percent. So we're really happy to see that kind of a reduction in young people thinking that tobacco is easy to get. But then we have to ask ourselves, does that result in a reduction in youth actually using tobacco? And indeed, we can see it does. We've been measuring the use of tobacco and electronic cigarettes for tobacco since 2008 when we started this project with you. And e-cigarettes really became, were added to the California Healthy Kids Survey in 2014, so you can see both of those lines there. We've had a 91% reduction in youth using tobacco since we started this project. That's a big deal. If you walk back to when we first started talking today, about 1/3 will be able to quit and 2/3 will have a lifetime of addiction. When we reduce that by 91%, we're making a huge difference in public health and in the health of our young people over their lifetime. Not just today or tomorrow, but over their lifetime. This is a very big deal. And even the 59% reduction in vaping among 11th graders. The CDC just reported in June a 78% increase in vaping among 11th graders nationally between 2017 and 2018. But here we're seeing a reduction in vaping among youth. And that's a pretty big deal. That can't be said everywhere in San Diego County. So we're seeing the same kinds of reduction among the 9th graders. And I think that has to do with the work that we're doing here in El Cajon. Yes, we've seen a small uptick, but the city has done a great job. I really have to applaud Barbara Luck, Holly Savage, Tony Shute, for the diligence in addressing this and helping to keep those numbers down, even while across the nation they're skyrocketing. And in our reasoning, that's what makes us different in El Cajon. When we look in social science or public health research, what has changed, what makes the outcome in this community different than the outcome in that community, it's what have they done differently. Well, what's different is El Cajon has a tobacco retailer licensing ordinance that works. And it has been working for 15 years. I cannot tell you how proud CASA is to be a part of this effort here in El Cajon, how grateful we are for your leadership, and whether they will ever acknowledge it in high school or not. Young people grow up in this community, stay in this community, and they are in a better place because of the work that this council has done and the leadership in tobacco prevention that you've done. Again, I thank you so much, and thank you for letting us be a part of this movement. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Well, first off, I would give you a round of applause for all the work you've done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Questions, gentlemen?
Hi, Gary.
Is there anything that you could suggest that we could do to lower the vaping sales rate?
Well, there's things that the Surgeon General and the CDC are recommending, and we're now seeing in other communities start to percolate up. One is a recommendation that all flavored tobacco be moved into the stores that are age restricted, like the smoke shops or vape shops. And that takes them out of places like 7-Eleven where they're going to stop and buy, potato chips and whatever else on the way home from school. But moving those to an age-restricted location moves them away. But we've got to stay with the TRL on top of that and stay with the compliance. But that's one of the recommendations. Another recommendation is that some cities are passing ordinances to eliminate the sale of flavored tobacco products, including menthol, because they're designed to be specifically for a youthful audience. But those are the two kind of most advanced policy directions that we're seeing around California and across the country, and are recommended by the CDC and the FDA.
How much does the typical convenience store sell in tobacco products in 1 year?
Well, we have journal reports from the convenience store journals. They're association journals. One suggests that a typical convenience store will sell $800,000 worth of tobacco products over the course of a year.
And what is our tobacco license fee right now?
Oh, I was afraid you were going to ask that. I meant to look it up before I left. I'm going to look at for Tony somewhere. I think it's $700.
Okay.
7-Eleven, I think.
Are there other cities that don't have the option of the $1,000 fine? They just say, okay, 30 days, no tobacco if you get caught selling to children?
I haven't seen that. Most cities offer a penalty, a fine, and they can pay the fine or have the 30-day suspension. I think $1,000 is pretty minimal. They've known about this. They have had so many options for training their staff. We provide training materials. We have gone out on so many occasions to the stores. Most of the retailers here know us. Under the deemed approved ordinance, they're supposed to be getting training. I don't believe that that's happening as regularly as it should. So I think $1,000 is pretty cheap.
So for the benefit of the audience, would you like to explain deemed approved very quickly?
Sure. That was another El Cajon Leads the Way ordinance holding the retailers that sell alcohol accountable when they violate the state or local laws around alcohol. Whether or not they have a conditional use permit or that they are legal nonconforming, they would have to get back in line and apply for a conditional use permit and meet newly defined standards that came out of several workshops and the work of this council and Tony Shute and others.
Now, is it your opinion that the same people, the same retailers that sell the tobacco to kids are selling alcohol to kids?
I've given a lot of thought to why would they be willing to sell tobacco to someone who's under age 21, even when the license is in that portrait format. And are they really denying the sale of alcohol? I don't know the answer to that. I can't imagine that they really say, oh, tobacco's okay, but not alcohol. I get a sense that they are just selling products because that's how they make a living.
They're profiting on the misery
They make a lot of profit.
others.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I remember when I first got on the council, and I was against smoking because my mother had emphysema. My sister was a chain smoker for years, and they actually both died from smoking. But one of the first things we did was we used to have cigarette machines around the city.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first things that I proposed, is to do away with the cigarette machines.
Yeah.
And so that was way back when.
Yeah.
And then the next thing we did was a lot of people were smoking in restaurants.
Yes.
And I had the chamber make a survey of all of the restaurants, and what they came up with, 2/3 of the restaurants said we'd like to have it outlawed altogether.
Yeah.
So that was the next thing. Rather than having a smoking area and a non-smoking area, we banned smoking in restaurants in El Cajon.
Yeah.
Then Gary got elected, and I said, well, Gary, you're good at this, and we'll work together on this, but you take the lead. And Gary's done a tremendous job, and I really compliment him on that.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah.
Well, back to the leadership of the city on both the tobacco vending machines and smoke-free restaurants. El Cajon passed those ordinances long before the state passed the state law.
Right.
So again, this city demonstrated a lot of leadership in protecting public health, and frankly, it's protecting the viability of commercial businesses. The reason why restaurants like it is because the cigarette butts aren't ruining the upholstery, making the place stink and have to scrub the walls, and because their staff. At that time, women were predominantly servers, and the lung cancer rate among women was much higher than men, and it was because women were in the service industry and breathing that. So it saved them money by taking care of their staff.
Well, I was surprised that the restaurants actually said they didn't want them, but I can understand why they don't, because of the cigarette burns on the carpets and the upholstery, and then the lung cancer and the employees, and things like that. In fact, my wife was at the time she was allergic to smoke. We used to bowl, and we had to stop bowling because she was allergic to smoke and couldn't do that. But the cigarette machines, a lot of kids would buy their cigarettes here in the old days, and long before some of these people were even born.
Exactly.
In the audience.
Yes, sir.
But that was one of the easy access to get cigarettes, was out of a machine. So
Yes, sir.
yeah, we were glad to
Indeed.
see those go.
Yeah, tobacco is the only legal product that I know of that, when used as directed, will kill you, and it can kill the people around you. So I really applaud your efforts in lowering the smoking rate among children. And now we only have about 11% of the people in California that smoke. Even Disneyland now is completely smoke-free.
Yes.
And that's saying something, because they made a business decision. It's good for business to be smoke-free.
Yes. Well, we hope that second reading on the 24th will pass. Yes, sir.
No questions, just encouragement, and thanking you for being vigilant as well and bringing this to the council and the city and making this known. I have a 2-year-old son I'm going to raise in the city, and hopefully more, and it is frustrating to know that retailers are making lifelong consumers of a deadly product.
Yes.
It's immoral, and you don't need to base your business model off of selling tobacco to kids. And if that's your business model, then you shouldn't be in business. So thank you for doing that. And I know we mentioned it earlier. I don't know if it's possible to come down harder on these people that are still selling. I mean, you said $1,000 isn't much. I don't know what we have to do to stomp this out, but you're taking the decision. These people are breaking the law, and they're taking the decision away from parents.
Yeah.
and it's abuse is what it is to children, and so there shouldn't be. So thank you for what you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Morgan, I have a question for you. We have two council members that just talked about changing the penalty. Do we have to put that on a future agenda then to discuss that if we want to do that?
Yes, this is just a presentation at this time. Even if it was public comment, you would need to bring it back to have staff, direct staff to look into that.
Okay, I'd like to do that.
Anybody else? Well, Dana, thanks.
Thank you.
Great presentation and great work.
Thank you so much.
Please give the rest of your staff our thanks. All right. We now have a proclamation for Parks and Recreation Month. I'd like to invite Recreation Director Frank Carson to read the proclamation. Also with us today are Brenda Pruden and Tim Omila. Please join Frank at the podium.
Thank you, Council. I'd like to first show a brief 1-minute video. Every year we try to do a different promo, come on down guys, of our Parks and Recreation Month. So this is our promo video this year. We'll show our free summer movies in the park as well as other things. The National Recreation Park Association theme this year is Game On, so try to do something a little different with it. Go ahead.
July is nationally recognized as Parks and Recreation Month. The El Cajon Recreation Department believes that we develop youth, support families, and provide safe places. The City of El Cajon maintains 17 parks, operates 6 community centers, and 1 public pool. Our core services include after-school programming, youth sports leagues, dance and cheer, gymnastics and tumbling, active adults and seniors, and aquatics and swim programs. Some of our large-scale citywide special events include America on Main Street, July 4th, Hot Fest, and free summer movies in the park. This month, don't forget to get your game on. July is also recognized as Parks Make Life Better Month. Please come out and enjoy your parks and recreation centers.
Hopefully next time we'll have the volume a little better.
That's good. How'd you do that thing?
Yeah. I'm going to give the proclamation to Brenda and Tim here. Brenda is one of our all-stars in our Public Works Department working in the Parks Division, and Tim recently got promoted to Recreation Supervisor overseeing Wells Park and Cajon Valley Middle School. So whereas July is National Parks and Recreation Month, and Parks and Recreation makes lives and communities better not only in July, but all year long. Parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide inclusion, recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all residents. Whereas each month over 100,000 patrons visit our local parks and recreation facilities in El Cajon, our parks team assures a clean, beautiful, and safe setting for you and for your family to enjoy. The recreation staff is committed to deliver on their promise to develop youth, support families, and provide safe places. Whereas in celebration of Parks and Recreation Month, we invite you to join the City of El Cajon in observance of July is Parks and Recreation Month by visiting a local park or participating in any one of our outstanding programs. This year, the National Recreation Park Association theme is Game On. Through summer camp, a youth sports league, exploring a trail, pickleball, meeting friends on the playground, picnicking in the park, or discovering nature, parks and play go hand in hand. Now, therefore, I, Bill Wells, Mayor of the City of El Cajon, together with the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of July 2019 to be Parks and Recreation Month in the City of El Cajon.
Thank you, Frank. Let me see if there's any questions or comments. Well, Frank, you guys do a great job. Thanks to your entire staff for all that you do.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And congratulations on your promotion. You're welcome. All right, agenda changes. Staff, do you have any agenda changes?
Mr. Mayor, we have no changes to the agenda.
Council? Moving forward then. All right, brings us to consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the City Council, a council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you wish to pull any consent items? Staff?
No, sir.
Angela, do we have any speaker cards for consent items?
We have no cards, sir.
I'd like to make a motion then to approve the consent items. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, Successor Agency, to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we have any cards under public comment?
Yes, sir. We have 2 cards. The first speaker is Samir Kasim.
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, Honorable Council Member, 2.5 years ago, you approved a project for me. It's called Magnolia Heights. It's a subdivision of 25 houses south of Magnolia. After 2.5 years ago, we worked very hard to get the final approval from the city. A few days ago, they signed the milers for me. I requested from the city a simple request to deliver water from the other side of Magnolia Avenue to my side. And the city staff rejected my request. The site I'm working at, it's about 600 foot wide and about 750 foot long, 240 flat, and about 500 foot hilly area and rocky. And by no way I can drive a water truck I have right now and a water wagon I have there to complete the job and do the grading. I have 2 service roads. In each road I have wet utilities and dry utilities. And I'm going to cut Magnolia Heights in 2 occasions from side to the side. And as a matter of fact, I am going to build for the sewer line, sewer manhole. In 2 places, I'm going to cut Magnolia Avenue, in 12 by 12 by 12 to put a manhole 5 foot wide and 12 feet deep. I requested to cut Magnolia Avenue 6 inches wide and 6 inches deep, and my request is rejected. I always understand that city staff work with the developer hand by hand to make his project easier, not difficult. Believe me, I cannot do more than half of the project without having a high pressure water from Helix Water District, and I cannot drive a truck there. That's why I came to the City Council, hoping that the City Council will study this matter and help me to complete the project, because tomorrow we're going to break the ground. Appreciate your understanding. Thank you very much for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you. Let me see if there's any questions. Questions, Council? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bonnie Price.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I want to thank you for taking us on a pre-opening tour of the Magnolia East County Performing Arts Center. And as one of the people who drafted a report years ago asking for certain kinds of contents in the theater, I was pleased to see that the city staff did what they did. They not only got cup holders on the arms of the chairs in the theater. They added rows of seats, and a bonus was they made the theater user-friendly for attraction of various kinds of acts and performance artists. So that should give the city a leg up on attracting good entertainment for the people. So I wanted to say thank you about that. And the other thing I wanted to bring up was I heard that there was not sufficient application for planning commissioner. Is that still true?
Oh, I don't think so. I think we've...
Okay. Well, if you don't have enough people apply, I would suggest you advertise and make sure that people understand that people of all kinds can apply. And I think the meeting time is during the day. If you change it to night, maybe you get more applicants.
Actually, the meeting will be tonight.
Thank you.
No more cards, sir.
Thanks. All right, there are no written communications on today's agenda. We are now at public hearings. Item 9 is for an easement summary vacation at 512 Raleigh Street. And staff, would you tell us about this, please? Hi.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, council members. Yasmin Arellano, Deputy Director of Public Works. The city possesses a 12-foot easement of real property for a freeway off-ramp at 512 Raleigh Avenue. This easement had a condition that a freeway off-ramp start construction by September 1st of 1980. A freeway off-ramp was never constructed, and a freeway off-ramp at the subject property is no longer needed. The vacation of this easement is consistent with the elements of the general plan. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Let me see if there's any questions. Any questions? All right. Angela, do you have any speaker cards on this item?
No cards, sir.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, this is a housekeeping item. Is there any further discussion, or would someone like to proceed with a motion?
Mayor, we need to open public hearing first. Is a public hearing?
Excuse me. We have... All right, I'm going to open the public hearing, and we have no cards, so I'm going to make a motion then to close the public hearing.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
That's government efficiency in action, don't you think? All right. Council, back to you. Housekeeping item, does anybody want to make a motion or discuss it?
Adopt the next resolution.
Second.
Move and second, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right, there are no commission reports today. Item 11 is my activities report and is as reported.
How about
Pardon,
10?
sir, item
Number
10.
I'm just missing everything today.
That's what everybody's here for. Rotational homeless.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that one. Go back. Okay, here it is. I apologize. All right, item 10 is a report on the rotational night shelter homeless shelters. I'd like to ask staff to tell us about this.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. If we can go to the next slide, actually. The purpose of this agenda item is to research a question that the council posed back in March, whether it was feasible or practical to implement a rotational night shelter. We've done that research, and per council's direction, we're coming back to the council with a recommendation. Go to the next slide. As part of this research, we actually put together a committee of 6 city employees that did a lot of research. We looked at literature. We looked at some best case practices around the United States. And we talked to a lot of people. If we can go to the next slide. In fact, we talked to 10 different organizations. We talked to about a dozen homeless individuals at Wells Park, on East Main Street, on 2nd Street, and asked lots of questions, tried to understand their operation, shared with them kind of some visions that we had of what this could potentially look like, to get some ideas, their thoughts, their comments. And the purpose of the agenda item is to sort of take all those thoughts of the individuals we met with, facilities we toured, and developed a recommendation based on that. If we can go to the next slide. So I'll just cut to the chase. Based on all of our research, staff does not recommend that the city implement a rotational night shelter. And I should probably define what that means. In our mind, a rotational shelter means something that's not a permanently fixed shelter, a shelter that would move periodically, whether that be weekly or monthly. That could vary. And by night, meaning that it would only be open for bedtime, so for sleeping purposes. So probably about 7 o'clock in the evening it would open up, and then it would depopulate about 7 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to kind of walk through some of the reasons why staff's not recommending moving forward at this time. And there's kind of 4 primary rationale for recommending against this type of a shelter. If we can go to the next slide. The first is that none of the experts that we talked to said a rotational shelter is a good idea. Just the logistics of moving constantly is very cost prohibitive, and also just technically difficult to do. One of the shelters, or one of the experts we spoke to, of course, was Interfaith, that does a rotational shelter on a very small scale. And they said the majority, the yeoman's work is the moving of the facility from one place to the next. And so on a large scale, this would be very difficult on an ongoing basis. There was also a concern that in order to really identify the exact right type of a venue, there's certain amenities that would be needed. And to find enough qualified sites to really have that benefit of the rotation, there's a lack of confidence that the city would be able to find enough of those sites to make that difference. And the other is just disruptiveness. A lot of the homeless individuals we spoke to said a rotational shelter would be very disruptive. They are at a point in their life where there's a lot of disruption, there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of unknowns, and not knowing where the shelter is would cause problems. The other concern, and we heard this from the experts, primarily from those that actually run fixed shelters, they said that neighborhoods will already be upset at you, and so by rotating it, you've just now upset every neighborhood in the city. So from a political perspective, it's something that I think is important to consider. Go to the next slide. Some of the other rationale for our recommendation is there is some mixed thoughts and feelings about whether a night-only shelter makes sense. It all depends on what the purpose of the shelter is. If it's just to get people off the street at night, a night shelter probably would suffice. But if the goal is to wrap around services, to address mental illness, to address substance abuse, to find housing navigation, and to connect people, just operating at night, you'd never be able to accomplish that. It has to be a day shelter, or shelter run 24 hours a day, because that wraparound service work occurs during the day after folks have gone either off to work or have left the shelter. Those that stick around are those that are the ones that are seeking help. We also looked at how much it would cost to run a facility, because there's so many variables, and because our recommendation already was looking like it was not going to be something that we would be recommending. We did take sort of a stab, and we looked at what Alpha Project's cost is. They spend about $44 per person. Granted, that's for a shelter of over 300 individuals, so their per capita cost could actually be lower because they have some economies of scale. But if you were to just apply that $44 per person for a shelter of 100 beds for a 1-year period, That's $1.6 million. That's a lot of money. Now we could make an argument that maybe 100 beds isn't needed, maybe 25 beds is more realistic. But still, you can see that there's a significant amount of money that would be involved with running any type of a shelter, whether it be rotational or non-rotational. The other thing is, our concern is that clearly the night-only and the rotational shelter does not address what we think are the root issues of homelessness, and that has to do with mental illness and substance abuse. And so it really, in staff's perspective, it just is another way to accommodate homeless lifestyle by giving folks a place to get out of the weather at night, and potentially creates a magnet to an already significant problem in the city. Next slide. As part of our discussions, we heard some messages that resonated or were repeated over and over again. And the one is, if the city council were to direct the use of a shelter or the approval of a shelter in its community, it was important that it be a fixed shelter and it be available and open during the day. Staff would recommend, if this is an angle that the council wants to explore further, in our mind, there has to be a condition in the region that our neighboring jurisdictions also participate, that this not just be El Cajon going it alone. It's staff's opinion that if the city were to establish a homeless shelter, that there needs to be one established to the north of us in Santee and Lakeside, that area, and to the west of us, somewhere in the Lemon Grove, La Mesa, Spring Valley area. We think that a shelter, 3 shelters in the East region would enable us to focus on those that are in our community and also avoid the perception and maybe the reality of becoming a magnet for homeless population, even more so to El Cajon. The other thing that we heard was the notion of a safe parking area. And this is an idea that's popped up in other cities. Typically, folks that are living in their cars, a lot of them are families. A lot of them are working individuals. And so having a place to park your car at night, a place to store your things during the day, actually accommodates those that are trying to look for work or actually have work. And maybe that could be an area or a baby step to further explore. The last thing we threw out there for the council to think about is, rather than spending $1 per person for a permanent shelter of a government-run facility or a government-sponsored facility, is to look at the private sector and see, is there availability of beds, whether it be apartments, whether it be hotel rooms, whether it be ECTLC or other shelters in the city or outside the city, and we offer vouchers to individuals for them to find housing through another way. That does not address any of the ideas of trying to provide help, wraparound services. Frankly, it just probably solves a problem for one night at a time. It doesn't look at the problem holistically, but we thought we'd throw that out there. Staff's actually not recommending that the council take any action on any of these 3 alternative ideas, but we wanted these to be out there for organizations like the East County Homeless Task Force to explore, because we think there may be some viability in some other organizations taking the lead in exploring these. Last slide. With that, staff is here to answer any questions about some of our findings. I have members of our committee that participated, and if they want to come up and help respond to questions, I may point them out. So,
thank you, Graham. Appreciate that. Council, do you have any questions or comments of staff?
Yeah. Question for the city manager. Excuse me. We talked earlier today that you came across one family that said the dad was looking for a job, needed a place to store his things. So that got me to thinking, I want to help people that want to help themselves, that are willing to work. That's important to me. That aren't using drugs or abusing alcohol. Someone that may be just down on their luck. And so I was thinking about perhaps we rent a storage unit for them for a month if they're actually looking for work, or we get some sort of expanded contract with ECTLC, and we can put them up for a week or two because it takes a while to get a paycheck. I'd like to see staff explore something like that.
Let me comment on that really quickly. We did see that there was a barrier. Some individuals that have capacity to work, that do not suffer from mental illness, that can work without substance abuse issues. One of the barriers to working is if they have all of their possessions in a cart, and if they were to go to work, when they return from their shift or their job, all their possessions that they own would be gone. And so that's a real barrier, fear of separation of things. That would be an area that I think there could be some value. I would feel uncomfortable with the city sort of running a check-in and check-out personal items, like a coat closet. But we have some organizations in our community. We have ECTLC, we have Crisis House, we have the Salvation Army. Maybe there's an opportunity to do some partnership with another organization to help run that. And if there's a small financial contribution that would help finance that, that seems like a really good use of funding to help folks that are actually looking for jobs or want to work, to eliminate that barrier toward work.
So that's something I'd like us to investigate, because maybe for $100 we can get a voucher to rent a storage unit for a month, and they can get a job that way because they're not worried about their things being stolen. Or they can get a few days at ECTLC where it's a safe place for their children. It's there's no alcohol or drugs there. It's kind of run like a boot camp, but it's a safe place.
Comments? Steve, go ahead. The feedback that you got, or the people that you interviewed, is very comprehensive, very thorough, which is an excellent job. And those all are external sources. Do you have any feedback from internal sources, such as police and fire? I can imagine some concerns they would have.
Before we even started any of this research, we actually looked at sort of a what I'd call a failed homeless camp that was sanctioned by a church in the community, and to try to understand what went on there, what worked, what didn't work. And there is concern by both law enforcement and fire department that we would, unless there was a shelter operated by a professional management company, a company that has a lot of expertise in this, that we would become the de facto managers of the facility. So if it were, for example, volunteers operating a shelter without a lot of expertise, we would be called out and we would be really managing the day-to-day operations through our police officers. And so that we heard that from law enforcement. We heard that from fire department. We heard that from those that run shelters as well, that they have a good relationship with the police department. They know when and when not to call because they can manage sort of that stuff. But that was a real concern from our law enforcement folks.
Bob?
I think what you said about the Salvation Army and the Crisis House, that would be good if they have a place to maybe put these, I think they use these trash bins in San Diego where people can store their things and then retrieve them as they're needed. I think that would be a viable thing, and that way the city wouldn't be running it. We would just be helping to maybe offset some of the cost of it, and that way families like this one that Gary mentioned would have a place to put his things so he could go to work and not worry about his things being stolen out of his car. He'd have a place to put them. So that might be a viable alternative. And I think since we rent the Crisis House to them for $1 a year, the building, I would think that they would be more than happy to facilitate that and maybe hang on to these trash bins and have somebody look after them, and we could just pay for part of the time that they have to pick up their things or drop them off. And it's working, I guess, down in San Diego they do that, and I've heard cases of students leaving their things there or their books there, and then going off to school. When they need their books, they take them with them, and they have their things stored, and then when they come back for them, they get their whatever clothes they need. And San Diego does that, I believe, and it's probably pretty successful for those people that want to go to school, want to work, and maybe help them give a hand up rather than a hand out. So that would be something to pursue and maybe look at. I think would be good.
Bob, you make a good point. Although I'd rather have the storage at some other place, because the Crisis House is right by our brand new hotel that's going to open up pretty soon. So
yeah,
I would want to see a steady stream of homeless people, walking by the pool area, maybe take a dip or something.
Maybe maybe before the hotel opens.
So I'd rather it be at one of these secure. We got storage places all over. There's one on Raleigh Street that I used to use. It's in a kind of an industrial area and we wouldn't be talking about a whole lot of people, because I want to screen these people. I want to make sure that we're not just enabling, a drug and alcohol-induced lifestyle for people and act as a magnet for anything goes. In fact, to address what the city manager talked about with the failed church camp place, I was on the city council when that happened about 18 years ago over at St. Albans, and it was like a Wild West. Some gal even got pulled into a tent and stabbed with a syringe and managed to crawl out. And it was really, really a bad thing going on. There's all sorts of prostitution going on. It was just awful. That's what happens when there are no rules, and it drew in homeless people from all over Southern California. So, like, at the time, El Cajon was like the homeless capital of San Diego County, and it's something we don't want to have happen again. And then about 20 years ago, we had the shelter at the National Guard Armory, which is about 4 blocks from where I lived, and it was there for a winter shelter, and that was really bad too, because the homeless people would leave in the morning and they'd go up through all the neighborhoods all the way up into the Fletcher Hills, and they'd be stealing kids' bicycles and digging through the trash and urinating and defecating on people's lawns. It was just a nightmare for weeks and weeks, so we don't want to go there either. So I think we have a very carefully screened group that the people aren't storing it on drugs or alcohol. They want to change their lives. They're down on their luck. We give them a little hand up to make their lives better by securing their belongings, making sure they're safe, whether that's by an expanded contract with ECTLC or by having something, stored El Cajon or A1 self-storage, where they have an area they can go to, and that way we give them a voucher for that, and the city's not involved in it any other way, except they get the voucher and they can go. They have a small storage area, maybe it's 5 by 5, wouldn't cost us a whole lot of money, and that gives them an opportunity to keep their things safe so they can go out and look for work, because that's actually what we want, is to get them back into society.
Phil?
Thank you for this report. I want to take a step back and just give a 30,000-foot comment that this is important that we're having these discussions and collaborating with stakeholders in the community. I don't know that there's any one solution to solve people experiencing homelessness. This doesn't sound like this is going to be the solution. There's no one silver bullet, but I think that it's important that we're having this discussion. I'm very happy with the way the staff has incrementally and slowly, if we're going to implement something, we should have metrics. It should be measurable. We don't want to throw money at programs if they're not going to be effective. So I'm encouraged. I believe this came up before I was on council. I'm glad that the council's considering it, talking about it. I think this needs to happen more. I just took a tour of ECTLC this week. One of the barriers that I heard was not having a permanent address for work. I don't know if that can be satisfied by a P.O. box. Something along those lines, if that's been discussed, it might fall in line with the same idea of having a storage unit, but with the same idea of those who are looking to lift themselves up, giving them a hand up, if that might get them over the hump of having a permanent address that an employer can send paychecks to or whatever it is, HR documents, that might be something to look into.
Okay. At this point, I'd like to ask Angela if we have any speaker cards.
We have one speaker, sir, Ms. Bonnie Price.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi. I'm glad they're taking this up. As I was listening to you consider alternatives, I was thinking of a person I know well. This individual was homeless and unable to work because of a mental and physical condition, had to drive around in an RV and be moved along by the police at all times of the night and day, and became so traumatized that the individual was unable to really talk to other people. So it's very important that something be done. This person has recovered now that a permanent location has been found by that individual, but it took a couple of years for that person to become untraumatized, properly medicated, and no longer fearing other people. That's what happens when the police move people along. So we really need something like San Diego is doing for people who are living in their cars or RVs, where they can park and maybe leave by 6 in the morning and then come back later. Something should be done. One of my friends suggested, city has land. Why not turn some of the city-owned land into housing for temporary purposes or for long-term purposes? That's my comments.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Sir, we received one more card. Bradley Russell.
Mr. Russell.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Thanks for letting me speak. My name is Brad Russell. I work for McAllister Institute. I am a homeless outreach worker. I do homeless outreach in the El Cajon community and actually in the whole East South County community. And I'm really glad that we're having this discussion and that there is a great need. There is a great need in the East County, in Spring Valley, in El Cajon, in Lakeside, and all the other communities for some type of homeless shelter. We do have a homeless problem. All you have to do is walk down the street. All you have to do is go to some of the parks. The Parks and Recs are doing a fine job, but the homeless have taken over Wells Park. They have taken it over. It's sad. Unfortunately, in the homeless population, there's drug and alcohol problems. Yes, there is. These people are also human beings. A lot of these people use drugs and alcohol because they're scared. They're desperate. They don't have a place to live. People are getting robbed out there in the nighttime, so they use meth to stay awake all night. In the morning, they get up, or they're still been awake all night. They drink vodka so they can go to sleep, and they sleep in the park, or they sleep on the sidewalk. So we have to do something as a society. And ETLC is doing a great job, but there's a lot of barriers in that program. There's a lot of things that you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that. What we're talking about as a society and as a community, and with the East County Homeless Task Force, is lowering some barriers and trying to come up with a solution together, to move forward and to help these people put their lives back together, one brick at a time. There's several municipalities in San Diego County that have work programs, back-to-work programs, where the Parks and Recs actually put some of the homeless population to work. I happen to know that in Chula Vista and with McAllister Institute, they run a program through the Parks and Rec where they have a work program going on, and I'm sure that anybody wanted to talk to Gene McAllister about that and find out how that worked. They got a grant through Kaiser. They got to fund that program. So there is some funding available through private enterprises, and the city doesn't have to take the whole burden of the thing. But there are professionals that would come to the East County, and there's talk about the three structures in maybe one in Spring Valley, maybe one in Lakeside, and maybe one in El Cajon. It's a great need. It's a great need, and they're going to be with us. And if we don't do something to help them, give them a hand up. Maybe not a handout, but a hand up. And the storage is a great idea. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, really quickly, Mr. Russell actually was very valuable to our team as we went out and met with homeless. Could you imagine me going out wearing a suit, introducing myself? Hi, I'm the city manager. I like to ask you a few questions. Doesn't usually go over well, but Mr. Russell actually was sort of the bridge that allowed us to have some great conversations with folks because he knows the population out there. And in fact, as part of our outreach that one day, I think he got young man into who was an addict on heroin into some sober living. Hopefully he's still in that facility. So anyway, Mr. Russell does some great work in our community. You should just be aware of that.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Those are my partners.
Are there any other cards?
No more cards, sir.
All right. We don't need to close the public hearing. Staff, do you need any direction on this?
Well, this is what I heard. I heard from at least two of you that you're interested in exploring maybe the idea of some storage through a partnership. And if that's something of interest, what I would recommend is that we actually engage with the East County Homeless Task Force who's here and utilize them as our partner in helping to explore that a little bit further and maybe bring something back at a further date with some pros and cons. The city of San Diego runs it. It's very expensive to run, by the way. It's not as easy as just putting some trash bins out there and watching them fill up. Yeah. But we don't know enough to tell you whether that's a great idea or not a good idea. But I think it's worth having some exploration, and I think there's some value in bringing some of our community partners to the table to help us explore that. So if that's something council's okay with and giving us that direction, we can come back with another report at another date.
Council? You don't need a vote, just your thoughts?
For it. I'd be interested in it.
I'd be interested in it.
Great. We look forward to hearing from that. This was a good discussion. It was a good thing to go through. But I think what you probably found out was that the concept of a rotational shelter was more difficult because treating homeless people and helping them is more difficult than it seems. It seems very intuitive that it would be very simple. You open up a place, people come, they sleep, they go the next day. But, and I say this because I spent most of my life in mental health and worked in emergency rooms, so I learned the hard way on that. You've got problems from mental problems to medical problems to violence problems to it goes on and on. And asking somebody to do that once in a while would probably be very difficult. But I think it's great that we went down this road, and we have to keep asking, what can we do, or we'll never get to the solutions we need to get to. So thank you, staff, for spending so much time and effort on that. And, Council, are you ready to move on? Steve?
I'd like to make some comments on it. It's an idea that I brought to the council in March with the mayor's support as well, because the public expects us to leave no stone unturned. And it was a wild idea, but you know what? The public expects us to think out of the box. The public expects us to look at wild ideas and to say, does a wild idea work sometimes? I don't know. But what you saw was a very transparent process that the people of El Cajon saw, that really the city spent a tremendous effort in trying to reach all the stakeholders with this. So the fact that we don't move forward with this is not a failure. It means we tried. We're still looking. We care in a sense. What we've seen is it's very difficult to gather people in one spot, whether it's through a safe parking facility, whether it's through a fixed shelter, rotational shelter. Once you gather people, you get a whole new series of complications. For instance, with police and fire, we might be asking them to serve in the role of psychologists to screen these people. Because when you take different people who are homeless and put them all together in one spot, are you putting somebody who might be dangerous around other people in a setting where you have them gathered together? We don't know. Are we expecting our police and fire to have those kind of skills? That's difficult expectation to have of them. That's not really what I think they're expected to do. So gathering them in one place certainly has its drawbacks. It's an expensive thing, as we've shown, because not everybody could do it. There has to be experts who do these kind of things, and that costs money. I know the public is kind of saying whatever it costs, it's fine by us, but there comes a breaking point when it just costs too much, and the public would say that's too much. Certainly a shelter, whether it's rotational or fixed, where you have rules, is going to be difficult on some people. They don't like rules. That's why they're living the way they're living, is they choose not to live with rules. And so there's no guarantee that if we even put them into a shelter that they will stay there and live by the rules. They may just walk away. So I think I'm not sure that a rotational shelter or an additional fixed shelter, even a parking area, would produce any different outcome than the tremendous effort that our partners in the city are providing right now with case management. We are providing a tremendous outreach effort. I'm not sure this would do much in a difference. So it was a great exercise in transparency to saying we're trying, we're looking. This one didn't work, but we keep pressing forward.
Excellent, Steve. Thank you. All right, Council, I think we'll move on from this. Commissioner reports. There are no commissioner reports today. Item 11 is my activities report, as reported. Item 12 is a legislative report, and there is none today. Item 13 is Councilmember Garrett Kendrick.
As reported.
Councilmember Bob McClellan.
As reported.
Deputy Mayor Steve Goebel.
As reported.
Councilmember Phil Ortiz.
I have one addition, meeting with resident Jim Sigliano on Friday the 5th.
And both of you and I went to the Lions Club, didn't we?
You're right, and the Lions Club edition on yesterday.
Yeah,
yesterday.
I'm sorry to make it complicated, but I forgot I went to the Lions Club as well.
Minute. Yep.
Okay, good. All right. Item 17 is a joint councilmember report from Deputy Mayor Steve Goebel and Councilmember Kendrick. Gentlemen.
Mr. Mayor, Council, and the public, I bring this item to you because it hopefully fills a hole in an area that we have when it comes to protecting minors in our city. The current municipal code, Chapter 9.3, says a social host is to prevent the consumption of alcoholic beverages and controlled substances by any minor at the gathering. Prop 64 legalized marijuana in the state of California, so marijuana is not on the list of controlled substances in the state of California. However, it still remains on the list of controlled substances at the federal level under the Controlled Substances Act as a Schedule I drug. So because we have those inconsistencies, we really should take a look at adding marijuana to the list of social host things that need to be prevented. Typically, we think of social hosts as older adults, perhaps even parents sometimes. But sometimes social hosts are 20-year-olds, as was reported in the Union Tribune this past Saturday in San Marcos, where a 20-year-old was a social host for a gathering of over 100 people and was arrested because many of the people at the party were alleged to be under the influence of marijuana or alcohol. So we don't always know that social hosts are responsible adults. They could be adult children living in their parents' home and the parents are gone for the day. So I think we need to cover these gaps in the code, and I'd suggest to my colleagues on the council that we send this to the city manager for review.
Okay, great. Anybody else want to comment, Gary?
Yeah, actually, Steve and I came up with this one separately. Happened to do it in about the same time period. I think we need to clear up any ambiguity here in the law to make it clear that giving marijuana to a minor at a party is against the law. There can be no ambiguity whatsoever. I truly believe that marijuana is a gateway drug, and that the people that give the marijuana to the children, that they might be 16 or 17, and they are driving and can drive stoned and crash into somebody's car. The primary function of local government is to protect the people, and the people that need the most protection are our children. So I think this is something we need to do, and people will think twice about giving marijuana to children at a party if we do this. Put some real teeth into it.
Yeah, I would be interested in that, and that would be a good idea. However, I wonder, do we already have a social host thing for such things as meth or heroin or things like that? Is that on the social host category of things that we would make the social host responsible if there were young people using those types of drugs, or even they were using them there?
Mayor and Council, the social host ordinance impacts, as Mr. Goebel mentioned, both alcohol and controlled substances, and heroin and meth would be part of that controlled substances definition. We don't have a true definition in our ordinance. If we're looking at this, if that's the council's desire, I think what I would do is suggest adding another definition, since we do use the term controlled substances, as well as to look at whether we need to add marijuana or cannabis as defined under the Health and Safety Code as an additional descriptor.
And I don't know if you have to name them all, but there's this fentanyl that's been brought in from Mexico, and then they have heroin, oxycodone, all these things that I don't know if they're in the ordinance or not. But if somebody were passing them out there, or that drug that they use on young women to make them more available. I don't know, I can't remember the name of it, but there's something that they use. And those things should all be on that list of things that social hosts should be responsible for not having young people using those things there.
Yeah, I would fear of trying to list everything, but controlled substances would include those descriptions.
Okay, good.
Steve.
One of the things we have to remember about marijuana, the Sandag Criminal Justice Bulletin from about a year ago took a look at juveniles who were in juvenile hall. They found at that time, at that measurement, 45% of juveniles in juvenile hall were currently tested positive, I should say, for marijuana. And then they surveyed that group in juvenile hall and said, okay, let's take a look at substance use. The most frequent substance ever used by those polled was marijuana. 91% of people in juvenile hall had tried marijuana. That was number one, followed by number two, alcohol, followed by number three, tobacco at 74%. So certainly there's a danger in marijuana among youth. I believe that it also can affect a developing brain into perhaps risking mental disease as that person matures. So marijuana is a very important topic to talk about, especially among youth, and we owe it to them to protect them. I want to backtrack on 1 second. I'm not sure that marijuana is off the California controlled substances list, but it is something that we should discuss for the prior reasons.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I very briefly and concisely, I agree with all my councilmen members wholeheartedly. I think this is a great move. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Steve, for bringing it up.
All right. So, staff, do you need anything from us? You have your direction? All right, move on. All right. There are no general information items on today's agenda, and there are no readings of first ordinances on today's agenda.
I'm sorry, sir. I apologize. We do have a speaker for item 17.
Thank you.
David Shorey.
Mr. Shorey, sorry about that. I was ready to move on.
No worries, Your Honor. Thank you very much. My name is David Shorey. I'm with the Institute for Public Strategies. I'm the East County Program Manager. And I just wanted to thank the Council for the consideration and introduction of this item. While we cannot support or oppose legislation, I do want to offer for your information some ideas and other things that similar jurisdictions have provided. As the city manager indicated, having a definition both in terms of controlled substances as well as marijuana is very helpful in firming up and securing these kinds of ordinances, as well as there is a trend that both at the state level and at localities levels to move away from the term marijuana into the use of cannabis because of the multiplicity of uses of the cannabis product that can be regulated in their CBDs and other kinds of things which may or may not have intoxicating use but should be used with great consideration. And the state also uses the term cannabis. In addition, other jurisdictions have added the civil penalty process to this in addition to a criminal penalty process. And so just to offer those ideas for Council's consideration, staff's consideration, and we at IPS are happy to provide any technical support that we can in this endeavor. And thank you very much for your time.
What does IPS stand for again?
Institute for Public Strategies.
Okay. Any questions from the Council?
I think Poway does have a cost recovery element for social host situations where a violation is proven to have occurred, so we should include that in looking at our ordinance, a cost recovery.
Yeah, that's already in our ordinance.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you coming.
Quick question.
Oh, yeah, please.
Yes, sir.
So the way this is written, I just want to make sure it's written right now. What we're presenting is marijuana and marijuana products. You're saying it should be expanded to cannabis because that doesn't fully include.
Yes, sir. And there's also, I will just offer this, there is the use of the term marijuana has some racial overtones to them. There was a history of prosecution of minority folks actually beginning at the turn of the 20th century using the term marijuana as a scapegoating. So people are trying to move away from that term given its history and move more into the use of cannabis, which identifies the plant versus the name of a plant using the Spanish name. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Didn't know that. Okay.
No more
We all
cards,
set?
sir.
Okay. All right, then. There are no general information items on today's agenda. There are no first reading of ordinances on today's agenda. Item 18 is a second reading and adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 2.16.020 regarding the salary adjustment of council members and mayors. I will ask the City Council to read the title, but first, Angela, are there any speaker cards for this item?
No, sir, no cards for the item. And with your permission, the title of the ordinance is an ordinance repealing Section 2.16.020 of Chapter 2.16 and adding a new Section 2.16.020 of Chapter 2.16 of the El Cajon Municipal Code, adjusting salaries of council members and mayor effective January 1, 2021.
Thank you. May we please have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second. Move to second. Please vote.
Got to vote.
Motion carries by a 4-1 vote with Deputy Mayor Goebel voting no.
All All right, this brings us to adjournment. The regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council and El Cajon Housing Authority held this 9th day of July 2019 is adjourned until Tuesday, July 9th, 2019 at 7 o'clock p.m. Thanks very much, everybody.